What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Neph4rix Plays Nier Replicant. So we just completed ending A, right? Let's go ahead and check out B. We'll get the cool lights on in the background.
Whenever I interacted with Kainé, I was reminded about something from my past. Maybe my mind has been confusing her with my sister this whole time. Anyway...
So is that the exact same thing? Kainé's dreams discrimination? Aw, dude, is it monologuing right now? The sound of rain filled the village. The steep cliffs that were surrounded the area, magnifying sound, causing even the slightest drizzle to rattle like a thunderstorm. Then wisps of smoke streamed from huts as the villagers huddled in their homes and waited out the rain. A single child, however, had braved the downpour and was now wandering slowly toward the wooden, hawk-shaped weather vane at the center of town. The wanderers reached the vane, which had existed for as long as they could remember, and stared. The child's faces was simultaneously delicate and fierce, like a teacup that had survived a shipwreck. Those traits combined with pale white skin to give them face almost sexless quality. If the beak turns east, I go home. If it stays west, then I... The child blinked. Rain slowly dripped down the young one's short hair and began its long descent to the ground. Come on, come on. The child felt a slight breeze and watched as the vein slowly creaked to life. Spinning this way and that for a moment, it finally settled with the beak pointing firmly toward the east. East, really? Before the vein could move again, a jagged rock came spinning and tumbling through the air, striking home against the child's head. The force of the blow dropped the child to the ground as hail of stones began to fall all around. Oh no, they found me. A heartbreaking smile crept across the child's face as the stones continued their assault. Through the rain, the sound of multiple footsteps grew louder before a voice rang out. You who, Kainé? The voice belonged to Demo, worst of all the bullies in the area. As Kainé struggled to stand, a final stone came skittering through the mud and bounced against her foot. Blood oozed from a cut above her eye, blurred her vision, but she could make out the shapes of Demo and his usual gang of idiots. The boy seemed taken aback for a moment by Kainé's seeming indifference to the blood dripping from her face, but quickly regained his bravado. What's up, freak? You like the rain? You like getting all wet? Or did you finally decide to run away from home? This is so mean. Though she was in futile, Kainé turned to leave. Before she could get more than a few steps, the other children scrambled to surround her, cruelty burning in their eyes. Kainé knew those were not the only eyes on her. The tormentor's parents watched from the safety of their homes. She was attuned to the sensation. It was one that she experienced many times before. While some villagers simply turned a blind eye to the actions of their children, many encouraged it openly. In a society ruled by superstition and fear, Kainé was something to be hated and, if possible, destroyed. I didn't see you could leave, freak. Demo's words chewed at her like a worm through an apple. He can't hurt me, she lied to herself. Be strong, be brave. He can't hurt me, he can't hurt me, he can't hurt. Oh look, the little freak is gonna cry. What's wrong? You said that everyone hates you and wants you dead. Kainé prayed for the rain to flood down and carry her away from a world that seemed to have no place for her. But if they were gods, they chose to ignore. As Demo crept ever closer, the clouds began to thin and the rain slowed. Even the weather hates me. I'm useless, a failure. I wish Demo's rock had taken my head off. Kainé couldn't meet Demo's leering glaze. She lowered her eyes and stared at the muddy ground below. The bully moved forward until he was inches away. She could smell the scent of old meat on his breath. The boy grabbed Kainé's face with thick fingers and yanked it upwards. She turned it away. But he forced her gaze and jammed his thumb against her eyelid to pry it open. Goddamn. He's like this, just like, let me see your eyes. Show me, no. Did you just say no? Demo grinned evilly. You don't say no to me. No one says no to me. Not even taking his attention from Kainé, he called to his cohorts. Come on, guys, let's give this freak what she deserves. As soon as Demo finished, kicks and blows began to rain down upon Kainé. Demo paused, still grinning, as Kainé curled into a ball and tried to make the pain stop. I don't get you, freak. What you acting like a girl for, huh? Everyone knows what you really are. Kainé ignored the question, choosing instead to stare at the weather vane and continue to point east, as if supremely confident about the future it had chosen for her. Go home? Yeah, that's a funny joke for someone with dead parents and no home to go to. Freak, chanted the children. Freak, freak, freak. Kainé closed her eyes and listened to the rain, waiting for the pain to start again. As the clutching hands of the village children closed around her, she bent her mind to the sound of the rain, letting it become her entire world. The rain fell, but the pain never came. Only when the laughter of her tormentors turned to terrified cries did she dare open a single blood-caked eye. Kainé was shocked to see Dio sprawled on the ground, holding his head and screaming in pain. She could see blood welling from the spaces between his fat, twisted fingers. My God, he's crying. He's actually crying. Deprived of the leader, the other children glanced back and forth between themselves as if waiting for someone to step in and take charge. When no savior emerged, they began an easy and shuffle away from Kainé. But the young girl was the least of their concerns. Instead, their attention was wrapped on the ancient woman standing a few feet away. After struggling for breath for a moment, she finally spoke in a voice thick with rage. Hurts like a bitch, don't it? Now he suggests you scatter before I throw another one. And if you little bastards ever touch my Kainé again, I'll do far worse than throw a rock. You can count on it. The old woman crouched down and gently touched the hand Demo was using to cover the wound. Before he could think to protest, she grabbed her palm into the wound and twisted it back and forth. Ow, he screamed, limping to his feet. Stop it, what are you doing? Quit whining, A1, no one ever died from a scratch. Hit me with the rock, you stupid bitch, a big one. I think it'd have killed me. The old woman shrugged. Death is the best cure for stupid. Demo's face twisted with the rage at her words, looking his eyes on Kainé. He took a step backward and spat on the ground. Get out, leave this village. No one wants you here either. Seeing the old woman grab another stone, Demo and his companions turned tail and ran. As they fled, the old woman grabbed her side and barked out a single laugh. Ha, look at the fat boy go. Guess he's healthy enough to run from a fight. The woman's smile faded as she turned her attention to Kainé. Kneeling down, she removed her shawl and placed it around the young girl's shoulders, then produced a cloth from the folds of her dress and began blotting at the blood on her forehead. Oh, Kainé, why didn't you fight back? You're stronger than that lot. The words of her grandmother stung Kainé as she turned away. Don't be nice to me, she said. I don't deserve it. Nothing matters anymore. Her tears, held in for so long, finally began to fall on the muddy ground below. Everyone hates me. They think I cause bad things to happen. They think I'm a freak. I wish I was dead. As Kainé's tears turned into sobs, she felt her grandmother's hands on her shoulders. Despite her advanced age and diminutive size, she was a woman of surprising strength. And Kainé found herself unable to turn away. Don't talk like that, girl. It's a river wide and deep that flows between the realms of this world and the next. It grants no mercy to any attempt at crossing. You got a duty to fight until your last breath, understand? The old woman tightened her grip and tried to still the tremor in her voice. You know the pain of losing someone close to you, Kainé. You know because you survived it. As the words hit home, Kainé was struck by the force of her love for the old woman. As a young child, she didn't even know of her grandmother, but when her parents died, the woman quickly accepted her as her own. Grandma, as Kainé called her, was cunning, vulgar, and quick to violence. And their first few years together had not been easy. But with each year that passed, Kainé and her grandmother had grown closer. However, it was only now, sitting in the mud with tears and blood caking her face, that Kainé truly understood the depths of her affection. Here was a woman who had seen hard times, who had seen death, who had fought through all these things and somehow emerged on the other side. If anyone could understand Kainé's pain and loneliness, it was her. Do I make you sick, Grandma? Of course not, don't be an ass. Kainé drew her grandmother's moth-eaten shawl around her body and shuddered. But my body, it's not normal. If I was normal, then Mom and Dad wouldn't. Hush, interrupted Grandma. I will not hear another word of this nonsense. You're my granddaughter, and I love you, and if folks have a problem with that, they can just go to hell. With that, the old woman reached out and placed a wreath of dried flowers in Kainé's hair. The skill it took to bend the flowers without breaking the stems or losing a single petal was remarkable. And and the beauty of it made Kainé want to cry all over again. Oh my gosh, these are lunar tears. Grandma, you made this for me. Lunar tears were legendary flowers. Most people could live their entire lives without ever seeing one. And yet her grandmother had somehow collected a dozen or more. Kainé reached up and touched the wreath as if she could feel it was real. Where did you find these? Just stumbled on them while I was out doing this shopping. The old woman turned away as she spoke, leading Kainé to suspect that the search had been more difficult than she was letting on. The pains she took construct the ornament, let alone track down the flowers using in its construction, made Kainé's heart hurt. She reached up and gently adjusted the wreath, admiring the way it felt between her fingers. Didn't quite turn out right, said her grandmother as she acquitted it. These old hands have troubled delicate work, but it sure looks good on a pretty girl like you. Kainé blushed and turned away. You think I'm pretty? Of course you are. What a fool thing to say. Thank you, Grandma. Her grandmother smiled. We're gonna be fine, you and me, she said. As long as we got each other, we'll be just fine. Kainé took her grandmother's hands in hers, and the two of them struggled to their feet. As they began the long walk home, Kainé gripped the hand with all her might, as if she was trying to stop smoke from drifting away from the wind. The rain had stopped. Kainé stood beneath the weather vane, watching it spin in lazy circles, no longer caring about the direction it faced when it stopped. I don't need to escape. I have a home now. Grandma loves me, and that's enough, even if it's us against the world. Kainé let her gaze drift up past the vane into the cloudy sky. The last faint hints on a rainbow were slowly fading. As she turned and headed for home, the light scattered into a million particles and vanished, seemingly taking away the breeze. Kainé's dreams, daily life. Is this more reading? In the distance, Kainé heard the steady sounds of an axe striking wood. The noise had a purposeful quality to it, as if she was hearing a master woodsman go about his work. The firewood being produced, however, was far from a work of art as it could be. Pieces of every shape and size were being flung about a barren yard and with wild abandon. Anyone trying to stack such wood would probably die. Frustration between the job. Oops, let's go to swap controllers. Yeah, dude. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting it. Let's go continue. I think that's quick enough. Alright, there we go. In the distance, Kainé heard the steady sounds of an axe striking wood. Noise, blah blah blah. Anyone trying to stack such wood would probably die, yeah. Stupid piece of shit axe. Kainé's grandmother flayed away with the axe, filling the air with both splinters of wood and words that would make the most hardened sailor blush. Grandma called Kainé. Thank you, Kainé, yelled the old woman, taking her eyes off the wood for a moment. Don't get it too close or I might take your goddamn foot off by mistake. She brought the axe down on the piece of wood, sending chips flying in every direction. Once went past Kainé's close for her to hear the whistle, at which point she decided to step back. Once she scuttled to a safe distance, she cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, Grandma, do you need help? I can get you water or lunch or a new axe or something. The axe posed to strike another wobbly blow, paused in midair. The old woman considered her granddaughter's offer for a moment, then smiled. Tell you what, since I'm doing such a piss poor job at shopping, why don't you come here and take over so I can go get the water? Shades have been restless lately, and I don't want you running into one of them bastards. Relinquishing the axe, her grandmother picked up a long pole with wooden buckets on either end. Gathering water was by far the most difficult of the two jobs, but Kainé knew better than to complain. Once Grandma's mind was set, there was no change in it. Kainé did her best to help with the chores, but Grandma took every task that required travel to the village. She had a long list of plausible excuses. Kainé knew the real reason. She didn't want her grandmother to be taunted and harassed by the villagers. Once Kainé moved in, Grandma decided to take up residence a good distance from the area. Out of sight, out of mind seemed to be the best policy when it came to the villagers and her granddaughter, and rare the days when any of them two could be found on the rocky acre of the land they call home. Kainé enjoyed the solitude but harbored the secret resentment that her grandmother was forced to spend her golden years in such a place. After watching her grandmother leave, Kainé turned her attention to the task at hand. She had never chopped wood before in her life and soon discovered why the old woman hated the chore. Swing after swing of the axe produced only a tiny crack in the wood. When she finally managed to connect with the solid strike, the tool embedded itself into the log and refused to budge. Frustrated, Kainé swung the axe around her head and threw it long and all across the yard. Damn it, crap. She suddenly understood the joy her grandmother felt in the good curse. Happier now, she picked up the axe, forced it from the wood, and resumed chopping. She had a natural skill with the blade, but the task was challenging, and blistering soon began to form on her small pink hands. This is tough, and my logs are all weird sizes. Spitting on her palms and ignoring the pain, Kainé redoubled her efforts. Just as she was developing a rhythm, Grandma returned from the village, setting down her buckets with a small slide, and she took one of the logs. Coughed out a wheezy laugh. Pretty clumsy girl, you better practice if you... Her grandmother suddenly collapsed to her knees, causing one of the buckets to wobble precariously. Eyes wide, Kainé dropped the axe and ran to her grandmother's side. Grandma. The old woman shook her head and pointed a trembling finger at the bucket. Get the bucket, can't let it spill. Kainé studied the bucket with the foot as she knelt by her grandmother. A small bit of water slashed over the side and made a new home in the hem of her dress, but Kainé didn't notice. Grandma, what's happening? Crazed with panic, she grabbed her grandmother by the shoulders and shook. After a moment, the woman lifted her arms and battled Kainé away. Stop that, just stop, she cried, breathing heavily. It ain't like I'm dying, just tired from the trip was all. Kainé desperately wanted to believe her, but when took one look at the old woman's shaking hand and worn face and told her more than words ever could. Her grandmother had to live a long, hard life, and it seemed the bill was finally coming due. The time when her grandmother watched over Kainé's was ending sooner than either of them had feared. The positions would be reversed. The next morning, Kainé came to the side of her grandmother's bed and took her wrinkled hand. Grandma, you're sick. You need medicine. I'm going to the village. The old woman shook her head and tried to rise, but Kainé gently pushed her down. It's all right, she said. I'll be fine. Her grandmother fixed her with a gaze that could melt steel. After what seemed an eternity, she finally lowered her eyes and sighed. Well, I don't like it, goddammit, but I guess I should quit being so stubborn and let you grow up. The old woman watched as Kainé strapped on her boots and made her way down the road to the village. Hours later, as the unseen sun made its way across a dark and rainy sky, she was still watching. Kainé moved at a brisk pace, checking her pockets every few minutes to make sure that her grandmother gave her was still there. Every noise caused her to spin over on her heels, making sure she wasn't being stalked by Shade or worse, Demo and his gang. But she encountered neither tormentors nor shades, and finally found herself at the entrance of the village. A few adults she could see glance sideways at her, then mutter to each other behind raised hands before slinking away into the shadows. Her heart racing, Kainé took a series of rapid, shallow breaths and tried to calm herself. I have to prove myself. I have to help Grandma. I have to be strong. She chanted those words to herself over and over as she slowly made her way. Finally, her eyes settled on a rotund older woman who was angrily waving her arms in the air and telling everyone who would listen exactly what she thought of Kainé's presence. Hey lady, said Kainé with the bravado she did not feel. Where's the apothecary? The woman's flabby cheeks shook in bewildered anger. How dare this thing speak to me, they seemed to say, but Kainé saw her eyes held a different emotion, fear. Yeah, we're both scared, lady, trust me on this one. Which way? Kainé repeated. The woman pointed at a small building to her right before hitching up her dress and stumbling off in the other direction. Kainé cringed, expecting a stone to come flying from the semblance of a crowd, but none came. Her mind was filled with a strange sense of pride as she made her way to the apothecary, but the new emotion had little time to take root, for as soon as she opened the door, she noticed a familiar customer at the counter. It was Demo. He's clearly been sent on there for some kind of family errand, because his gang of followers was nowhere to be found. Oh my god. He's better. What are you doing here, freak? The insult was delivered without force, and Kainé happily ignored it. Stretching on the tiptoes over the counter, she asked the shopkeeper for medication. Pop barked. Demo, that old bitch, finally kneel over. Go to hell, Demo. The boy's eyes grew so wide they seemed ready to fall out of his head. But before he could let out a fly comeback, or worse, a punch, the apothecary told him to knock it out before he kicked them out of the store. almost slunk out of the shop, cursing Kainé under his breath. Once he was gone, she allowed herself to breathe once more. Taking a brief tour of the shop while the owner prepared her medication, countless tiny bottles filled the cramped store, each with a label written in some indecipherable language. An ocean of aromas assaulted her nose, creating a scent that was exotic, but not altogether unpleasant. Seeing such a variety of supplies gave Kainé a sense of peace. Surely in a world so vast, there would be a place that she could call home. On the far wall behind the counter rested a portrait of a stunning young girl. Once contained the bright, vibrant colors, but time had worked its cruel magic and they were beginning to fade. The beauty of the work, however, remained undiminished. You like that picture? Kainé turned to find the apothecary with a small vial of medicine in his hand. His eyes were gentle but sad, and they seemed to stare through her into nothing as he spoke. It's my daughter. I sketched it when she was just a little girl. She's been dead for a long time now. Kainé didn't know how to respond. She just stared at the portrait and tried to come up with the right words. Pictures are wonderful things, continued the shopkeeper. They let the ones closest to you live on forever. He shook his head slightly and looked down at Kainé and smiled, handing her the medicine. He reached into a sizable green apron and produced a handful of old wax crayons. You should have these. There's no one left that I wish to draw. Kainé took an instinctively step back, causing the shopkeeper's face to darken. Yes, I've heard the rumors about you. He said it's a small village and word travels quickly. Between you and me, I'm not sure which of them to believe, but I also don't think they matter much. I know your grandmother, Callie, and I think that the way she was driven out of this town is just deplorable. Grandma's name is Kali. That Kainé suddenly. She was still mulling this new fact over in her mind as she reached out and gently took the crayons from the apothecary's hand. Your grandmother is an old friend of mine, he said to Kainé, scooted away yet again. I owe her much. I wager she would like it if you drew a picture of her. Yes, I think she would like that very much. Kainé murmured a quiet agreement, but inside her heart it was bursting. Never before had a villager treated with anything but complete contempt. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible step, but it was a step nonetheless. With enough tiny steps, she might one day discover the rest of the world. When Kainé returned home, she found her grandmother asleep in her bed. Her feet was blackened and raw, even bleeding in places, leading Kainé to think that she was pacing around the room until exhaustion finally caught up with her. She placed the medicine by her grandma's pillow and turned to leave, but found the old woman's hand clasped around her. Back already, are you? I asked her grandmother with a yawn. Come here, let me have a look at you. Grandma sat up and examined Kainé from head to toe, finally satisfied that nothing terrible had befallen her grandchild. She leaned back and allowed herself to relax. Well, how was it? Those bastards give you any trouble? It was kind of fun, said Kainé with a small smile. No, seriously, it was fun, eh? Asked her grandmother in a voice which implied she believed anything but. So anytime you need me to run an errand, just let me know. As she spoke, Kainé removed the crayons from her pocket with a brief explanation of their source. She informed her grandmother that she was going to sketch her a portrait. A portrait of me, ridiculous. No one ever wants to stare at a wrinkled old crone. But Grandma, it'll make you live forever. Horse shit, said her grandmother, throwing back the sheet of her from her bed. Living forever would be just piss me off. But put these crayons away and help me with dinner. But Kainé would not relent, and in the end, Grandma found herself leaning against the wall of their house, as if posing for a master artist. Kainé looked up, took up the crayons, eyed her subject carefully, and set to work. Just as her grandmother was about to nod off, Kainé finished the piece. After staring at it from a bit, she released it from her grip and let it slowly drift to the floor. It's terrible. It doesn't look like you at all. I'm sorry, Grandma. I thought these crayons would, make drawing easier or something. The old woman's eyes narrowed at her grandmother's disappointment. Let me be the judge of that, she said, ignoring the pain in her back and reaching around for the paper. The sketch could not have been a person's face. It could not have even been a boulder and lump of clay, her incredible mishap and loaf of bread, all rendered in a chaotic array of colors. The old woman stared at the picture for a long time, then slowly wheezing out a laugh. Oh, Kainé, she said between the laughs. You truly are my blood. You're as clumsy as me, and I love it. But, hush, I won't hear any more bull about how you think it is. It came from the heart, and I'll treasure it always. True to her word, the old woman gave the picture a place of honor above the kitchen table. In the days that followed, Kainé would often catch her staring at the portrait with a strange smile on her face, an action she interpreted as silent, mocking laughter. A week later, Kainé could stand it no more and asked her grandmother to take down the artwork. "Posh," said the old woman. "I'll take this down when they roll me in my shroud." She pondered this for a bit and then turned to Kainé and dropped to one knee. "Listen to me, girl. Seeing the picture makes me happy in a way I've never felt before. It makes me want to go on so that someday you can feel that same happiness." It was a moment that burned itself into Kainé's memory, a perfect blend of pride and love and joy that came together from a lifelong remembrance. She swore to never forget the moment, to never forget the old woman who made her place in the world impossible. It moves on. People and memories move in and out like life ghosts passing through a hall. But this moment will be different. Kainé swore, because I will remember it forever. Forever. Okay. What are we, 25 minutes in? You just hear me reading over here? I mean, it makes a lot of, like, I like the character development, how it's like her grandma, basically.
Not gonna lie, I wouldn't have it any other way. I think reading's the best way to really get all the knowledge from the story.
I mean,
it's so well written too. You know?
I was gonna say that if it wasn't well written, I think I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because it feels like a story, like, you know, an actual book.
It's entertaining to read.
Yeah. Kainé listened to the sound of crackling firewood and stared at the black object on her plate. She'd been pushing it around the wooden disc for a good 10 minutes, ignoring the bemused stare of her grandmother. Finally, she summoned her courage and gave the object a brief sniff. A sharp, bitter scent flew up her nostrils and made it home there, causing her face to twist with disgust. "Grandma, I can't believe you want me to eat a bug." The old woman threw some more wood under the cooking pot and snorted. "It's no bug, you fool. Girl, it's a berry. Why the hell would I be feeding you bugs?" "Yeah, well, it sure looks like a bug," said Kainé. "I think it's burned or something because it smells terrible." With that, Kainé held her nose and threw the berry in her mouth, chewing as little as possible. "Oh yeah, that's terrible, all right." "Why, you little brat," laughed the old woman. "Look at the sass on you. You've been spending too much time with me, and that's a fact." 5 years had passed since the moment when Kainé's grandmother saved her from the bullies. As is often with two stubborn people, their relationship had gone in fits and starts, but moved forward all the same. Meals that used to be somber affairs were now filled with laughter and hurled abuse in equal measure. Kainé could not remember a time when she had been happier. As the years went by, Kainé started to shoulder more and more of the daily responsibilities. Her grandmother's legs grew weaker by the day, and she could no longer do many of the chores she used to take for granted. And so this morning found Kainé lacing up her work boots with a breakfast of burned berry rolling through her belly. "Where are you going today?" asked Grandma suddenly. Kainé looked up surprised. The old woman really asked for specifics anymore. "Well, I was going to check out the kelma trees and see if they were ripe. I thought we could make some jam or something. And I'm going to pick up some flagstones, so I need to take the wheelbarrow." "Flagstones? What in the hell for?" Kainé stared at her grandmother, then held out an arm and swept it around their home. Constructed mostly of cloth, rope, and rubble, the old place sagged like a boxer in the final round. "Grandma, a dying cat could chew through this house. I'm going to build a stone wall so we can have more protection." The old woman laughed, exposing her toothless grin to the world. "God damn, girl, if a bunch of thieves wants to ransack this place, let them come. We got nothing worth stealing anyway." "Not worried about thieves, I'm worried about shades. People saw one of them around the village yesterday." The old woman tilted her head and stared at her granddaughter. "Well, shoot, I don't know why you have to do it today. We can worry about it some other." "Grandma, no. If I don't get to the kelma trees, well, you won't eat tonight, you know that." A confused expression passed across the old woman's face, and for a moment she was a small child lost at a carnival. Yes, she said after a bit. "Yes, of course you're right. I'm sorry, Kainé. Lately it seems my mind is..." She didn't finish the thought, instead walking over to her nightstand and gently taking the wreath of lunar tears from the drawer. The flower's petals had aged to a brilliant whiteness, and Kainé thought it was more beautiful now than the day she first received it. "You're gonna be a true woman soon," Grandma said, as she placed the flowers in the girl's hair. So that means less chatter about shades and building defensive walls and more talk about how beautiful you become. Annoyed, Kainé reached up to remove the garland, but the look on her grandmother's face stopped her hand. "You're a beautiful thing," said the old woman, "and there ain't another like you in the world. I'm very proud of you." Okay, Grandma, that's enough. Goddamn compliments for one day. Such a mouth on you. Where did that come from? Gee, I wonder. I'll teach you to sass me, girl, yelled Grandma. Suddenly, she lurched down and grabbed Kainé by the ears, pulling her around the room with a crazed grin on her face. "Grandma," yelled Kainé in a quacking voice. "Grandma, stop it, what the hell?" The woman stared at her and blinked, then slowly at her wrinkled hands. It was the first time she had ever seen them. Oh, I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry, girl. Sometimes my mind is just... Kainé thought the look on her grandmother's face was the most heartbreaking thing she'd ever seen. Listen, she began. "Maybe I should stay home after all." "No, I won't have you stay here to keep an eye on an old codger like me. You go get your fruit and your wall and whatnot, I'll be fine. When you come back, I'll have a nice grasshopper dinner waiting for you." Kainé rolled her eyes, then kissed her grandmother on the forehead and made ready to depart, trying desperately to ignore that worry that was gnawing on the walls of her heart. Kainé could feel the old woman watching over her. She moved down the path. Don't turn around, she told herself, and in the end of the temptation was too great. She spun around on her heel, one final look at a small, bent woman standing in front of the ramshackle hut with a sad expression on her face. God, she looks so old now. Looks like the wind could reach down and just carry her away. We'll go ahead and call it a day here, ladies and gents. I just noticed the time. If you enjoyed this content, my new ebook, Kainé's Dreams, make sure to like, comment, subscribe down below. In the meantime, we'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.